All right, hold up. Wait. Stop the music. No background music to this review. No, this isn't even a review, or it's not an introduction either. This is a personal letter to Tomahawk, my old pal.
Mm.
Dear Tomahawk, screw you. That's right, screw you for assigning me Night of the Living Dead, Romero's 1968 beloved hero of a film. Screw you for assigning me a film that, aside from possibly Psycho and Citizen Kane, has probably demanded more ink and analysis than any other film in the history of cinema. Screw you for assigning me a film around which whole segments of the population have formed their identities. A film that has, yes, redefined horror cinema. I mean, anything I say about it will be taken personally. Anything new I say about it, if such a thing is even possible, will draw daggers from our listeners. Screw you, Mr. Tomahawk, for giving me a film about which everything has been said. The goddamn thing's been studied like the Torah. I might as well be critiquing Jesus Christ himself and trying to interpret his words in a new Joe Mummy-esque kind of way. It's goddamn ridiculous. So, what can I say? Well, I could say this. I watched the film obsessively while making my little film, The Nightmare. But unless by some stroke of fortune I end up making a great feature-length film one day, really, who gives a shit? Okay, then let's start with the synopsis, as if someone listening might not already know it. Night of the Living Dead is a nightmare wherein the quote-unquote heroes of the film become trapped inside a farmhouse that's surrounded by zombies. You all know them, the flesh-eating, mindless, ugly as hell undead. And while staving off the threat outside, it becomes increasingly evident that the real threat is the fact that the quote-unquote humans trapped on the inside are selfish, stubborn, and uglier than the cannibalistic zombies outside. Yes, indeed, the pettiness of the humans will be their own undoing and not the zombies. Okay, so now what? Well, just everything that's been said before, that the whole shebang is a metaphor for something else. Racism, sexism, religion, war, power, etc., so on and so on. All right. Maybe asking why the film is interpreted on metaphorical terms might get us somewhere. The black and white of the film evokes a nightmare because an absence of color makes a presented reality not quite real, but everything else, the forms, the movements, etc., creates a contradictory verisimilitude. The effect invariably is a dream-like emotional experience, and the emotion here is fear, real nightmare fear. And as such, as something that's almost reality, but not quite, the film invites deeper contemplation and analysis, like trying to figure out what a dream means the morning after you have it. Also, the construction of the drama is just ambiguous enough for us to project whatever metaphorical theme we choose onto it. Government or materialism, maybe. But maybe it's about the understanding of a child in relation to his ancestors. Or maybe it's about intellectualism in the age of social media. Who the hell knows? It can mean anything. But what does the mummy have to contribute? How about this? As a work of art of universal proportions, what Romero has stumbled upon is nothing less than a modern myth. And no, I don't mean an urban myth that you see disproved on the Discovery Channel. I mean an honest to goodness myth, like the Greek gods and heaven and hell and the healing powers of materialism. The kind of myths that are somehow sewn into our souls. The kind of myths we need to make it through the working day. And I say Romero stumbled upon the myth of the modern zombie because myths aren't merely invented or written. They're discovered like an element or a force of nature. This one took hold of Romero and legions of diehard fans, and it hasn't let go since 1968. So while I'm at it, I might just as well ruffle a few feathers. Maybe Night of the Dead is really about an artist succumbing to the commerce or the weight of his own creation. The guy wanted to make an Ingmar Bergman-esque film in 1968, but bent under pressures of commerce and made a horror flick that's attacked him ever since. Consequently, he spent his whole life making horror films and zombie films and never did quite get around to Bergman. What's worse is that while Night hit the exact right notes, finding almost by accident or in spite of itself to invite interpretation, the rest of the Dead movies suffer from a relentless and tiresome attempt to pin down the meaning of the myth he originally stumbled upon. Even if they're good films, they're not great like this one. And because of their insistence to, yes, crowbar in social commentary, they're not myths at all, just interpretations of the one he found. Still, a myth is forever, rarer than diamonds. Myths are sacred, and Romero's film is nothing less than that, a sacred relic. So Tomahawk, if you give this anything less than 5 stars, I'm going to spit in your eye. With love, Mummy.
Very nice.
That's with a lot of love, Tom.
With love. Lots of love. It's interesting to me that he probably had an entirely different vision, as you said, about what he thought his career would be. So he winds up getting an opportunity to make just a scary movie that turns into this legendary horror film about social commentary, and that's what he winds up doing for the rest of his life, basically.
The rest of his life. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
and he doesn't do anything else except make horror movies because people would, be pissed, and his horror fans would be pissed, and the non-horror fans would be like, "Oh, who's this horror guy trying to make a serious drama?" And
Yeah, well, this one's so great, man. It is. It's like if you wrote the Bible, you don't have to come up with another bestseller, for the rest of your career. You could kind of ride on the laurels of it.
This is the horror movie. At least one of them. There's a handful that are just legendary that you can't deny, and they're not just good horror movies. They're great films, and this I really believe is one of them, guys.
Yeah, it's for sure in the top 10, guys. I mean, I think it's, I guess we could throw out the best horror films of all time, and this would sit right there.
Yeah, it's in the top 10, and arguably you could put this into a top 100 films of all time.
How do you guys feel about that?
My first comment, unfortunately, has to pop the illusion that we are not recording this a week after our last attempt. Sorry, Tomahawk, I can't help it, man.
I agree with that one.
Sorry. My favorite line from your review, Joe, that I didn't catch the first time you did it was the healing power of materialism, which is a myth. I love that line, dude.
I wrote that one for you, actually.
Thanks.
Before you go make your point there, I guess it bears some explanation. We had a huge technical snafu last week, and the first half of the show was recorded last week, and we are recording a mere days before the release. So hi everybody, and Tomahawk, we promised you we wouldn't say that. I guess we just did.
I just want to review movies, Joe. I don't want to do interviews.
I'm so sorry, Tom, but you got to understand, my brain was being torn in pieces because the last time we recorded this, I was in my nephew's room in Florida, and now I'm in my room in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
My brain was yanked apart. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying to stay in character. It wasn't working. I apologize.
Well, it lasted a whole 6 seconds, Billy.
I know.
Congratulations for recording.
Yep. I really maintained composure there.
Hey, Joe, you said that you watched this film a lot when you were making The Nightmare, and I couldn't help but notice at the beginning of Night of the Living Dead that there's and not that this the shot's been used a lot, but that shot of the camera looking upward at the trees at the dead trees that's in The Nightmare as well.
Yeah, it's weird because I didn't actually recall this movie when I made that shot. I think it was actually the Coen Brothers film.
Yeah,
Miller's Crossing, and also David Lynch does it at night. I think, Billy.
Mm-hmm.
What movie is that? It might be Mulholland.
There's
Drive, maybe.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Jemmy uses it in an episode of The Sopranos too, which is hailed as one of the best episodes of The Sopranos. So.
To answer your question directly, Joe, like as far as great movies and everything, like the thing that surprised me, having not watched this movie in probably 10 years, it's been a long time since I saw the first Dead movie. The thing that I loved about it is something that it's a dead horse we tend to beat to death, but the low budget quality of it, man, it feels like a great drive-in movie, Like it has that dreamy, surreal, just the way it opens in the middle of things without any explanation. Those two people driving into the cemetery. Right. It's like you're already in the middle of it. It's already late afternoon. It's not like the movie, the first shot is someone waking up in bed in the morning.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the worst screenplay mistake that you can make, I think, is to have somebody waking up in bed.
Totally. But it's just got that sort of, in the way the camera moves and the way it just really feels like a dreamy, low-budget drive-in movie, And you made the point that I think the point that you're trying to make is that later on, the other Dead movies kind of get a little bit more analytical, and he thinks about things a little bit more. And he said in an interview that his one thing that he loves about this first Dead movie is the innocence of it, and you can't recapture that.
Right.
They were just doing it by the seat of their pants, basically.
Right. And I said he stumbled upon this.
He discovers it accidentally, almost.
Yeah, like I'm sure he had. You can't take all the credit away from him in the writing. He actually obviously wrote it, but there's something that you feel like he didn't figure it all out just yet. And I think that the fact that people projected a lot of social criticisms and readings into the film, that effect, obviously, it had a huge effect on what he thought was possible for the next one, and what he did here was he made a construction where the dynamics between inside and outside were, what's going on there, and just that dramatic structure is so strong. It's like those old myths, and you can put anything onto it. Like last week when we started talking about this, we were talking about, I said Kronos, but I thought of a better one, Icarus, right?
Yeah.
Like he flies too close to the sun and he falls down. Well, that could be a guy who melts. What is it? He melts his wings, right? It could be a guy who melts his wings, but it could be a zillion other things too. And that's what's going on here, and that's why this story to me is obviously it's worthy of the highest acclaim possible, and I just feel like in those other films, he's bearing down under the weight of this film. And putting that social commentary very consciously in there, and
almost as structural support, like it works as not necessarily filler, but it works as a framework to keep the myth angle of it alive. But it is diluted thereby,
Right, because it becomes too specific. But I mean, they're still able to be good because zombies and cannibalism, they're just so ripe for metaphor.
It's so basic it's just basic fears that you still have dreams about that kind of stuff without, it just rises up out of the depths of your psyche naturally,
Well, especially cannibalism, because it's very creepy and it affects you on a very primal level. But in dramatic terms, it's very, very literally, somebody eating themselves and killing themselves or killing off their own society. So it's just right. He just found this great thing in zombies. Did you
guys happen to know that they did the whole movie without ever calling them zombies or without ever even thinking of them as zombies? They actually referred to them as ghouls in the production. And it was only later after the movie came out and reviewers started calling it a zombie movie that Romero went, I guess they're zombies now, and continued that tradition. But he said in an interview at the time, if anyone had said zombies, they were thinking of like, the victims of Haitian voodoo who are convinced to go murder at their master's command, but it never occurred to them to call the creatures in Night of the Living Dead zombies. That's an afterthought, actually.
The news reporters during the film used the word ghoul. Bill, is that correct?
I don't remember hearing that, actually. I didn't even pick up on that until I listened to this interview.
You're saying like in production, the filmmakers were...
George Romero himself never thought of them as zombies. No one working on the movie thought of them as zombies. It was reviewers who decided to call them zombies.
Yeah, and even in the subsequent films, I think there's only one spot in all the films that they're ever called zombies.
Interesting.
And initially, was it the screenplay about like aliens from another planet coming down and possessing the human beings?
Yeah,
I believe. I think that's where the initial screen. Yeah, initially it was like that, and then it just kind of turned in.
And he realized it was too close to Plan 9 from outer space.
Max, is this? Would you
grave robbers from outer space?
Max, could you stand behind this being one of the top 10 horror movies of all time?
100%. And I'll tell you what, this has gotten better with age. The more I see it, the more I love it. And this is a man, seriously, not to suck him off, but George A. Romero kicked pop culture in the balls with this thing. And it's so crazy that he was an editor at a news station in Pittsburgh. And when he cut this thing, he cut it himself. He brought all the footage back to the news station at night where he worked all day. The guy's exhausted. He's slugging scotch. He's smoking cigarettes all night. And he cuts this fucking thing. And I got to tell you something. At the first 20 minutes, especially, with, I think William Hinsman, who's the cemetery zombie who attacks the siblings, he is up there with Lugosi as Dracula, with Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. I mean, that dude, and he rode that shit. I just love, this is where we get to really have our geek moment with this kind of stuff, because That dude rode that part for the rest of his life. Conventions, you
the
know.
first zombie.
So
Oh, yeah.
Is it really that iconic? The that initial zombie in Night of the Living Dead is. I mean,
It is to me, is what I'm saying. Every
Oh.
time I see that dude, and I think Billy nailed it. And of course, Joe, you nailed it in your review, but that drive-in feel. I mean, it is so when the sun is going down and there's that weird light. I don't understand those siblings. I don't understand their relationship. It's the weirdest relationship ever. Are they fucking? Are they not? I mean, what is going on with those two? One shit moves to the house and the ghouls
And
show
why-
up with the huh?
I'm sorry. Go on.
No, I'm just ranting. What?
No, I was gonna. And why is he? He's one of those guys that has pens in his shirt pocket too.
Yeah, and driver gloves, and he's just so weird, and he's terrorizing his sister. Listen, this movie is weird. It's such a weird mess, and it always used to show up on like golden turkeys, and I'm kind of jumping forward with my review of Dawn of the Dead, but it's so funny how this thing wound up being like this turkey, and then suddenly it's a very respected classic. And one more thing I have to say, how the hell, and I still don't understand how this thing is public domain. We could make a Night of the Living Dead now.
That is crazy.
And I think the more they make bad Night of the Living Deads, the more it just is a testament to how great the first one is. Tom Savini tried to make one back in the early 90s.
Right,
I
he did,
remember that. I've
That's
actually
fair.
seen. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah, how did it get into public domain? Because I didn't believe you, Tom, because I did a lot of, because Tom mentioned that last week or whatever it was, and I was like, no, man, nothing, because I'm always trying to steal music from my from my films, so I was like, no, nothing after 1928, there's like a specific date, but then I realized that it did fall into the public domain. It's just crazy that it did, And is that the reason why everybody's just allowed to make sequels to this? Is that what's going on?
That's why. I mean, George did. It was seriously like an administrative snafu, and he didn't register the script correctly because he wasn't out in Hollywood. Like,
Sure.
it's not like he had the Writers Guild telling him what the hell to do.
Yeah.
But you're right, though, Max. I mean, the fact that it's kind of interesting now that I think about that, and I guess maybe I should have done better homework. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. The fact that people keep making these just makes the mythology, or the legend of this one
It's like
greater,
open source mythology. You just get to add to it. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that it's almost as a parallel to what's going on now, where you just give your shit away for free, and if it takes off, it takes off, That's pretty interesting.
Max,
that's actually
to back up your point about that first zombie, what's his name?
William Hinsman.
He is literally, other than the lead character, the black dude, who's a really good actor. I don't know the actor's name.
Dwayne Jones, I think.
He's really good in that movie. Him and that first zombie are the only characters I remembered from having seen this like over a decade ago. And there's just something iconic about that graveyard and the siblings hanging out there. And then there's this guy in this shabby suit lurching around, like out of focus in the background,
Yeah.
And it's like, it's that mythology thing. It's just out of focus in the background emerges an entire, repeat what Joe's review was, the iconography, the identity that people have crafted for themselves based off of this, and it starts with this out of focus actor in the background,
And interestingly, it's like he's perceived by Johnny as, he thinks he's just a regular human being walking around the cemetery.
Oh, it's just a drunk guy.
Yeah, exactly. Or Max in a jogging suit.
I wish I was that tall and thin. But dudes, that's like the first. With all due respect to Taverny and that Val Lewton nonsense, we haven't seen a zombie walk like that. That was the first one, right?
Yeah. It's pretty well. Yeah, I don't even think the zombie.
This could be
hey man, Val Lewton, dude, think about that. I mean, as much as you want to shoe that, Max, think about that last scene in Why I Walked with the Zombie, when that big zombie was walking toward the camera. I mean, well, it's there, brother.
I don't know if this is true or not, or some.
Was watching Val Lewton.
I don't know. Probably, man. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was, man.
Yeah.
But
Just a quick one. This is like academic bullshit, but I read once a long time ago. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's actually a Tibetan myth about or people who are hypnotized, or people who are undead, or types of demons or something. But they walk stiff and upright with their arms out, and so like one of the superstitions in some Tibetan villages is to build the doors low so that a normal human being can duck into the doorway, but one of these zombie demons can't get through because they can't bend at the waist. And Romero apparently read about that and got some of his inspiration to have these zombies lurching upright like that from this myth.
It stands to reason. That's pretty good,
Yeah.
man. I guess that you can argue with the fast zombies fans with that one.
Yeah.
Do you fall into the fast zombie camp or the slow zombie camp, Tom?
Uh-oh,
Well,
Matt.
Joe, and I'm glad you brought this up today because it's something that I think definitely needs to be discussed. And
It's very important.
yeah, it's very important. Yes, in talking about these films, you really need to establish what side you are on. And Joe, I'm going to stick with the slow moving zombie side.
Oh, slow zombie.
Yes, I'm a big fan of slow moving zombies. They're scarier and slower,
Yes.
and they are slower.
Right. But hey, actually, Tom, you did hit on something that was pretty important, man, about that first zombie. And it's the fact that I think we talked about it with Kim a while ago, right? Was the fact that they look like us, man,
Right.
and he mistook that zombie, that undead guy,
Right.
for a human, man, and that's part of the fear that is the zombie.
It's such a
myth.
well done scene because, like, obviously, the whole point of the movie is it's like we're scaring people into thinking about a dead coming back to life and eating us, and that's what her fear is. I mean, he's telling her, you've always been afraid to come to the cemetery because she's afraid of the dead people to come back and attack her. And
And then it happens.
Yeah.
and it happens. Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
I would like to just weigh in on the whole running versus walking zombie thing. If you guys
Please,
haven't,
yeah.
if you haven't seen Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2, I highly recommend it because swimming zombies are my personal favorite, especially those that have mano a mano battles with great white sharks. So
Yes, I've
Absolutely.
seen that.
chipping in
Brilliant
there.
stuff. Brilliant stuff.
They are terrifying when they're swimming.
Joe, you got me thinking now. I can't stop thinking about slow-moving zombies or fast-moving zombies.
I don't know. It's just an intriguing question.
Yeah, but the slow movers, it's so much more disorienting because if you're putting yourself in the victim who's fleeing from them, you have this idea that they're going to get away, and they never do. Or there's another one around the corner. They get settled into this comfort, like, well, that fucker ain't going to catch up with me. I'm golden. You're not golden because next thing you know, you're looking back to see how far they're getting in the distance, and you're not paying attention to what lies ahead, and then you run into something probably even worse.
Yeah, it's that nightmare thing when you're running away from something and you can't get away.
Yeah.
And just the zombie thing, they just don't stop coming,
No.
and they're just slow and relentless. And it's a good visual or dramatic metaphor for death itself. You can run and real fast, but it starts to surround you and close in on you, and it's getting it's funny when in the later films when they're being all cheeky with those zombies and they're having fun with them and everything, but in the end the zombies are the one they close
Just
in
by sheer numbers, they just overwhelm like a massive bacteria or something.
Yeah,
and what's great too, how Romero in this film especially, he's not really showing you the outside of the house a lot, so you really have to like imagine it through like the news radio, and you kind of get this whole idea of what's going on outside, and you get like a visualization of it. But Romero's not really showing you like those like the exterior of the house, and it's so well crafted, man.
Yeah, I don't think he had the lights to put on the house. I mean,
Yeah.
I think all those outside scenes were lit, were lit with the headlights. Excuse me.
Yeah.
The headlights and the torches.
And with
That's
the
right.
burning armchair, I think there was
Let's just get back to the acting real quick because I do want to bring up one of the characters that's in the film. The guy, the Mr. Cooper character, and this is something I love this. I love this guy. I mean, I started to believe in the cellar. Like, like, that's how convincing Mr. Cooper is. But did you guys dig this character at all, or the acting involved?
I thought he was pretty typical. Like here's a typical. There's always that character in any crisis, science fiction, horror, whatever, or thriller type situation. The guy who panics and is going to fuck everything up. I thought he did good as that. I didn't think he was like Oscar worthy or anything, but I thought he did a good job in that role.
Fair enough.
You thought it was pretty funny, right, Tom?
I did, yeah. I just kind of he kept my interest. I was like constantly like just looking forward to listening to more of his nonsense. I kind of like what we're gonna get into later with Captain Rhodes, I guess.
I thought the wife of that character was a good actress. I thought she had some really good moments.
Yeah,
little small twists of, like, sometimes I think amateur actors just stumble onto these things that are so natural and it's unforced and these just really genuine little twists. And I thought she had some really good moments like that.
Yeah, really bitchy. But Tom, you really get you have this real affinity for just people who act unreasonably and absurdly and yell a lot. Like those are your favorite characters in movies, I think, right?
This
like
explains something of Tom's affection for Max, I think.
You better watch it, Billy, because he's going to pull out his impression of you.
I'm waiting for it.
Oh my god! Hey,
Iconographic.
Iconographic.
I found one of the creepiest scenes in the movie to be like toward the beginning when the lead actor with Dwayne Jones when he goes into the house and he just sees a dead body laying at like the top of the staircase, and I really just was really creeped out. I could see the body in my head right now, man. It was
with the eyeball.
Yeah, it was just
like the meat is eaten away from the eyeball in the face, so that it's just like
it was in black and white, and like, oh man, one of the creepiest things I've ever seen, man.
Yeah, I mean, and also when they were eating outside, which became sort of a trademark of Romero's. He always has one of the scenes where there's sort of a human flesh eating feast.
Oh
orgy.
Yeah, that actually surprised me because I remember those from the later movies, and I didn't remember that from the first one. And he was doing that routine right from the first movie. I had forgotten about it.
Yeah, that caused a lot of controversy. I think that pretty much catapulted this thing into the public eye, probably, that scene right there,
Right. Anything else, guys? Max, you got anything else on Night of the Living Dead?
Well, I'm curious about George and his fetish for muscular, strong-willed, sweaty, black lead dudes. I mean, Ken Foray is kind of the best badass at Dawn. Well, what do you think that's about? Is George just a big hippie and he's like, I want to put a black man as the hero? Because it becomes like this kind of like at the end. I mean, come on, are we really doing spoiler alerts for Night of the Living Dead? But at the end, it kind of becomes this awful statement on like racism and
yes,
right.
That's a big deal in that movie at the end.
Yeah, well, he insisted
it was just coincidental.
He was the
not
best
his response to the civil rights movement, George.
I think it was. I spent some time, bouncing around YouTube interviews, and about every 6 years he contradicts himself with fair regularity on the same topics. So one moment he's saying that he didn't do this on purpose, the next moment he's saying he did do that on purpose. One day he says he wants to make this, then that,
And how could they not be aware of it? All right, I could buy into the fact that, maybe like the casting, maybe he was the best actor. But when you're making that, let's just say when you're shooting that scene, you gotta know that it's gonna mean
Cultural
Yeah,
ramifications.
of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it might not have. You might not have written it that way, but at that point, you got to think to yourself, "Wow, this is going to be some really powerful stuff here."
I had forgotten that ending too, and that was great, man. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite endings
Extraordinary,
I've seen in a
extraordinary.
long time.
Yeah.
You're hurt.
Yeah.
You're angry. You're desolate.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's so
and
wrong.
it's such a ballsy thing to do, even for a horror movie. Like that was probably one of the early prototypes of the totally nihilistic ending for a horror movie, which even to this day people are skittish about trying. Even in the
Right.
most low budget piece of shit, they won't take chances like that of
No.
alienating their audience at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny because we brought that up earlier with Red State, earlier last week, whatever the hell it was, about yeah, an hour ago, about following around a character or a group of characters, and then them just being offed, And I guess it was just it was funny. Even when we were talking about Red State, I had forgotten that he did that here.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing to put into, a film in terms of the hero mythology, especially and what it does say about whatever social criticism is inherent in whatever movie it is that we're watching, and it has to do with this deep despair and cynicism and this nihilism, of not being able to believe in anything at all.
Well, it was 1968, 69. I said when they started making it in 1967. So there's no way that the cultural saturation hadn't reached down into the bones and the blood of anyone who picked up a camera. They were
Absolutely.
Here,
Even
my take is on it. If you are honest, if you write and whatever you do, if you do it honestly, it's inevitably going to be criticism of your culture and your time. That's inevitable. But the trick is to be honest and not to be self-conscious about it, I guess. And it works. I think it works better when it's reflexive and it just comes out of your honesty.
Well, like, what do you mean? Like, it works, but I think two different things are happening actually. Night of the Living Dead and Red State. But yeah, what do you mean? Like, how are you applying that to the films that we're talking about?
Well, with Night of the Living Dead, I mean, I think you put your finger on the central nerve of the movie, which is that he, almost by abstracting just general fears down to their deepest level, it becomes symbolism for anything, But in doing so and making the movie, he also applies some of his own fears to that. I know this sounds like a fucking like college course, but
no, it's cool.
I do think that his own fears about society are going to come out regardless,
Yeah,
sure.
And
that's
Billy,
it
what
just
you're
happened.
saying, and anyone that's any good writer, it's just he's gonna do that subconsciously no matter what.
Yeah. But if you're being honest about what you want to do.
If you're being honest, if
Yeah.
you're really sincere.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, what I sense is a difference in approach in the two films, and it's kind of interesting to put them together, because I think what Romero is doing is feeling his way and grappling toward, that social criticism, even if he hasn't defined it, and certainly he hasn't defined it as much as he defines it later in his later films, and as he tries to pinpoint it, and in doing that, he's got this deep despair because of I would say probably the Vietnam War
and civil rights, definitely,
and civil rights,
civil liberties in general being cut left and right, and
where I think that in later films, like we talked about Zombie last episode, where those characters get killed and I guess they kind of go out in a blaze of glory, so it's a little bit different. But with Red State, where we're following these protagonists, and they just get nonchalantly offed. And I was telling Tom, like, a great example of this is Scorsese's The Departed, where Leonardo DiCaprio gets killed right at the beginning of right at the end of the second act.
Yeah,
I mean, it's almost like. It's almost like like in the later films, in the contemporary films, it becomes less about trying to find and make a direct statement as it is about just like a complete disregard or valuelessness of the humanity and the hero in general, because that's what these films are. They're Campbell's heroic myths. So I mean, I think it's something that I've been thinking about the past few years, just constructing films and just seeing that coming out a lot. Just a lot of main characters just suddenly being offed. And here's an example anyway that I thought it was interesting to kind of bring up in relation to that. Where Romero's doing it, 40 years ago, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, great job on Night of the Living Dead, man. It's been a real treat. Let's do some ratings before we move on to Dawn. I'm going to start with the California Chainsaw Massacre. Max Cook. Max, what do you got for Night of the Living Dead?
A fond, solid 4 stars for me. Also, the last public domain remake was in 2006, Night of the Living Dead 3D. It starred our buddy Sid Haig, and George A. Romero is credited as a writer for the 1968 screenplay, since that's the source that he constantly is getting, stolen from him.
Yeah.
Do you think
Wow,
he gets any
amazing.
kickbacks from that?
No.
No royalties whatsoever.
No, he said no. He said, I've heard. I just was watching an interview. He said no.
Amazing. Mommy, what do you got for Night?
1 star. No, 5 stars, man. It's honestly.
Wow.
I think it's the best. It's one of the top 10 horror films ever made. I'm trying to think of the ones that I put it with, and The Shining,
Chainsaw
Rosemary's
Massacre.
Baby, Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Joe, don't forget Cat People without looking. I would definitely put that in the top 10.
Definitely.
You guys
Editing.
talk about
Snip, snip, cut, cut. Was that the sound of scissors I heard editing all of Max's monologue out, Joe?
I want to go back to something Billy said 5 years ago.
Oh, there they are again.
Billy, what do you have for Night, dude?
I give it a solid 4, and there's just a personality shortcoming with me in that I have not. The zombie myth, the undead myth, does not tap the nerve in me the way it does with other people, and I'm jealous. I really wish it did. I wish I could tap into the feeling that other people get from it. So it's absolutely brilliant. And the thing, like in discussing this, that I found is you almost can't talk about this movie. Like, it's almost impossible to analyze because it really does. It really exists on this like unconscious level,
Right.
culturally and as a film, and it's absolutely brilliant. And if it touched me personally the way certain other horror movies did, I'd give a higher rating, but solid 4.
Well, it was certainly made for the Misfits because it is the initial midnight movie. I mean, this is the film that spawned, that midnight movie madness that, films like El Topo and The Harder, what is it, The Harder They Fall, The Harder They Come, and Eraserhead, and Rocky Horror Picture Show, and the John Waters stuff. I mean, this was the one that started it, which is fascinating. Joe, I'm not going 5 stars.
Oh, that's me spitting in your eye.
I'm going 4 stars. It's a great movie, and it was a real treat and to revisit it. But it's just I'm saving the 5 stars, Joe, because I think it's just it's just a little. It's just it's a classic. It's legendary. I just think it falls short in a couple spots. And
Well, like in what? Technically?
yeah,
Like
I think. Yeah, even just like. Yeah, technically, definitely. It kind of looks crappy at times. It really does, and you
That's
can tell
pretty
that
rough.
you could tell that it's not. And listen, and this is a segue into.
But here's my argument, man. A film is more than a collection of performances and technical lighting and cinematography and sound. Like it's this film, listen, I'm not trying to convince you, man. I mean, it's not my film, so but this film, it transcends that, and it's become something that so many other films have not been able to become,
Right.
And I don't, listen, I'm not trying to, honestly, I know it sounds like I'm trying to battle with you, but I'm not.
Right. No, this is a battle here, Joe. Take it easy.
Fight.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. But Joe,
Here.
there are certain.
Here's the sound of me battling you, Tom.
That's really
No,
powerful.
there are certain things that like bad acting. Now, bad acting exists in Dawn of the Dead at times and Day of the Dead, but the films itself are more polished than this one to me. So I think that's why I'm going. And I don't want to give away what I'm going to rate Dawn or Day, but I see how he. To me, like Dawn might be a little bit better of a movie, which is why I'm giving this 4 stars.
Okay. I don't like you anymore.
You're no longer allowed to sleep in my spare room.
Oh, all right, guys. Thanks a lot, man. Night of the Living Dead is complete, and we are gonna move into Dawn of the Dead, and the man to introduce it is none other than the California Chainsaw Massacre, Mr. Max Cook. Do it, my brother.